Hello, Steven.
Hi.
Guys, I'm really excited. I have my friend here and one of the best performance experts I know. And we're discussing business in 2020 and future. And we were talking about things. So, what is, in your opinion, the most important thing, both in business and personal?
I think clearly going into this year, it's not the strategy, it's not the goals, it's really your team. And a team can be two or more people, but it's essentially the relationships. Because we've all set great goals and strategies and it doesn't get done. Well, that's not only because somebody might have dropped the ball, which could be, it's around that team atmosphere. And here's what I found out: great teams produce great performers, not the other way around. So a lot of companies and organizations, or in our life, we want to be surrounded by great performers, right? Great people. That's great. But really, what we've seen is that you can collect a lot of great individuals, but it doesn't mean they're going to be a great team, right? We see it in sports,
Yeah.
unfortunately, for
Our
little issues
team,
with the Redskins, and things like that, which I just love the Redskins. Anyway, hopefully they'll
we all do, but hopefully they'll do a little better. We're talking about teams are the most
Yes.
important. Teams are fluid. Okay,
Yes.
things happen. People make mistakes.
Right.
I know I've made mistake with my wonderful team here. So how do you move forward? How do you put things maybe in the past? Like, what do you do to continue having a good team? Maybe that a few things happen in the relationship, move forward.
Well, here's the process that I developed to create high performing teams
Okay.
and sustain high performing teams. It's called a reboot. And the idea is a reboot, just like you for a computer, right? You have problems and get frustrated with the computer. The first thing we do is unplug it and plug it in or restart it. And it gets rid of the junk quite often, but it keeps the foundation. Well, here's what I found: every relationship needs to be rebooted. I mean, we've all seen couples that they're at dinner, like you're at dinner, you look over and you see a couple, they don't even talk to each other. They're like living in the past. They're already past the point of being disinterested. Or, companies and their teams where people are like, oh, that person is just being them. But what's happened is they're stuck in the past. So we all need to be rebooted so we get rid of the junk. And so that's what I think needs to get done
How do
for
you do
every
it?
team. Yeah. So there's many. I could talk with you about the process that we use because it's actually been, my clients have said it's been phenomenal. But one of the things you got to do, whether I'm involved or not, is you have to analyze and get people to talk about what the real issues are before you have that meeting and bringing in. So you can use an outside person. That's part of what we do. But you could use your HR person, or you could use a friend or whatever. But somehow you want to know what the issues are going in as best as you can figure out. Then what you want to do is at the very beginning, besides some basic ground rules, but really what you want to look at is talking about some personal stuff. So you take down the walls. And so I've developed these 7 questions that really immediately take down the barrier. Like, for example, what's your biggest challenge growing up and why? Why was it? And how do you deal with it? It's remarkable. Some people won't go deep or whatever, but a lot of people will say, I had problems with my father or my mother, or I was adopted, or I had challenges and we were always moving. And so I ask these series of questions, which we can get into them more. But what people inevitably find out with the people that they've worked with for years is they say, I never knew that. And here's another one I asked them: where are you from? And then I've done that, and people go around and go, I didn't even know you were from my same area. I did it recently where 2 people were in the same high school at the same time.
So you're
It's just
finding
bizarre.
common denominators between the team.
And what you're trying to do is take it down before moving forward. Then I go through the 12 essential elements of a high performing team, but essentially it's what the ground rules are. And then you talk about some of the key issues. And then there's another process I developed around the 2 hour and 18-minute.
So let's focus on the
Yeah.
12. We
Yeah.
don't have time to do all of them.
Yeah.
But we've discussed them. There's a few of them that you really like.
Yeah, but even before that, I know I'm interrupting because I get so excited about this
That's
stuff.
great.
But let's look at what even is a team a team. Everybody says, we're a team and there's no I in team and all these catchphrases, which I think is utterly useless. But here's what I found out. Most teams are really committees. And here's the difference. A team wins and gets challenged together. A committee wins or loses separately. So that's where somebody goes, hey, look, I'm doing my job. They're screwing up. That's not a team. It's where if I would go in front, go up to you and let's say I'm working with you and say, look, there's a problem here, but really we have a problem. And I really want to figure out how we can all make this work. And they use a lot of we, but not because they're trying to use that phrase we, but they get the meaning behind it. And so that's one. But there are 2 other elements that that you got to judge how your team is doing. The other one is, did they think of the team first, position second? Team first, position second. So a lot of people come from their own point of view, right? So they'll say, they'll in companies they'll represent their area, but really great teams suspend and put their position, leave their position at the door. So a client of mine said to his team, he took over an organization. He said, leave your position at the door. If you're the CFO, if you represent a business area or whatever, leave the position at the door. You're here because of your wisdom and expertise. And what that started to do was create a great challenge with each other. And they worked tremendously, and they were able to double their revenue and reduce staff by 30%. And here's the thing, it wasn't because they had to reduce staff, it's because they eliminated a lot of redundancy.
Yeah.
So and the third one is no daylight. So great teams can like close the door and have knockdown, drag out debates and arguments, but outside they should be appear as one. They shouldn't see any daylight between any of the members. So when you look at these categories, what you really find out is most teams are really not a team.
Yeah.
And that's important because then we can look at what needs to get done. And that deals with the 12 essentials.
So I love that. Now, we talked about doing this process that,
Yeah.
you call
The
a reboot.
reboot. Yeah.
How do you put things in the past? How do you really put things behind you and not let the past affect everything you do in the future?
Well, the 12 essentials, the three I want to highlight that really will put that to rest. One of them is everyone shares to get the unsaid said. Everyone shares to get the unsaid said. So when I'm facilitating, we go around and everybody shares, right? But it's to get the unsaid said. So the biggest problem, so if we had to like just say one highlight out of this, the biggest problem in relationships and teams is not what people say, it's what they're not saying. So it's really we have to get that unsaid said, because otherwise you can't leave it in the past. That's when you gotta say, look, I was bothered that happened. And so there's a set of tools so it goes productively.
Now, do you
But
do
that's
it
important.
publicly with the whole team, or do you do it one-on-one?
Well, it's always great if you have an issue one-on-one to handle that offline. But I'll give you an example of how it can work both and how it impacts everybody. I did a reboot with an organization, and we found out through our analysis that two people were really at each other. And everybody knew it, including my client. But what they didn't know, and these two people didn't take into account, is their impact on the entire team. So we wrote up the analysis, we sent it to my client sent it around, and then those people read it and they go, oh my gosh, they got together and solved all their issues before we handed it the reboot. Now you might say, okay, we're good to go. No. Then we had to talk about that impact to the entire team, because the team had some resentments, had some issues, were kind of concerned on relying on some of these individuals. And so that needed to get aired out. So that's an example of getting the unsaid said that is critical, both personally one-on-one, but then you got to deal with the team dynamics. Because I think we underestimate in life that, let's say the two of us are not getting along. We might say, well, it's just us, but everybody else suffers. Like when you look at divorced families, right? It's not only the divorce, it's the impact to the kids. And look, divorce is obviously the right thing to do in many, many cases. But the point is, we just underestimate how it impacts other people.
The ripple.
Yeah, I'll give you another example, because I get all excited about this. Two leaders that don't get along, right? The big boss and another big boss. And they say, well, but what happens is factions within the company develop because they are allegiances to their boss. And so they're not working well. And those two people say, well, we just have issues with each other. But they don't take into account the ripple and impact to everybody else. So that's why when I work with these high-level teams, you kind of get all this handled. So get the unsaid said.
So put out there all the things. It's not. Do you think most of the things inside teams are unsaid?
Yeah.
So more than 50% of the things are unsaid. People are keeping it inside. It creates a lot of problems. So the first thing to do is just basically, sorry for my language, but put all the trash out there. Put it all out.
Well, put the most important things. Because here's the other thing. We've done many of these analyses, and they'll show a lot of challenges. And people read it and they go, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through this? But then this is the other neat thing. When you really pick off the biggest issues, like look at it like a wall of issues. If you take the most fundamental bricks and you just take them out and get it solved, the wall comes tumbling down. So it isn't as complicated. And that's how people I've had repair marriages do incredible stuff, because they're like, oh, we have all these issues. But what they realize is it all kind of boils down to a few key ones, and that's the ones that need to get said, right?
I almost feel like the things that we need to do first are the things that we naturally want to put off.
Yes, that's so true.
The things that we don't want to deal with are the things that we need to deal with first. And a lot of times, putting them off makes them worse.
Yeah,
And also, a lot of times, they're not as bad as we think.
right.
Sometimes they are, but
Yeah,
then
yeah.
other times they're not. There's a great understanding. There is a lot of the things that you talk about with the principles we're going to touch, but it's not that bad. And just a little bit of,
Yeah.
clarity, honesty, and expecting good results solves it.
Well, and the reason why you can see I was like going to interrupt you is because let's look at why people don't, right? Because they have the fear it's going to get, it's going to get worse, or how's it going to go, and that's the number one reason why people withhold. It's not because they're trying to be evil to the other. It's not resentment.
No.
It's what it's fear.
Fear.
Fear is the number one reason why people don't share things. Fear of repercussions, fear the person's never going to forget it.
Fear of
They'll just keep
rejection.
reliving it over and over and over again. Fear we're going to hurt somebody's feelings. Fear it's not going to go well, ruin our career, ruin our relationships. We have all these fears. So the number one thing we need to do in life, and this is what I think is the most important trait of a leader, is create safety, emotional safety. They call it psychological safety, but I really like the emotional safety because it's the feeling that it's safe to share,
Mhm.
right? Because you can create all these ground rules that can still say, I'm not going there. So what do we do to create that? How do we get people to share? Well, one is, and the most important thing is to create safety. The other thing is, and this is rarely thought about too, is reward honesty. So have you ever had somebody, a situation where you've shared something with a person, they go, thank you, that's really helpful. And then they don't do anything with it. You're like, I do feel safe to share, but it's a waste of time, right? Or somebody wants your advice and they just don't take any of it. Right? Some people aren't going to take every piece of advice, but people don't take any advice. We just say, forget it. So we need to create that emotional safety. And the other one is rewarding honesty. So how do you reward it? You simply use some of the feedback and you show it. I remember I had a client of mine say, we used to get all the ideas from the workforce and we barely get any of them now. And I said, well, are you using it? He said, yes, I am using it. We are using it. I said, well, how are you letting the workforce know you've used some of the ideas? And it was over the phone. It was silent.
Silence.
Because what he realized was he was doing a great job, and his other folks were doing a great job of fielding ideas and using them. They just forgot to tell people that they were using it, so that most of the workforce thought nothing's changing. That's what our companies do these big employee surveys, and they say, oh, thanks, we learned a lot, and they make tweaks and judgments, but most people say, it's a waste of time, versus the companies that take that information and do action. So rewarding honesty can be as simple as just using the ideas, and also can be simple as saying thanks, and here's what I'm going to do with it, or reporting back, hey, you did give me that feedback, we can't do it this way, but we're going to use, because you said something, it created an idea where we could use it that way. You're giving this sense that I hear and I will use what I can, not it just goes down into that black hole.
2020, a whole new decade. One of the things that Bill Gates said, and I love, is you really overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in a decade.
Yeah.
I love what you do. I love how you help teams continuously have the right habits for long-term success.
Yes.
So we're starting this. What is the top 3-4 tips that you can tell entrepreneurs, teams, to better their relationship, to move forward the right way in 2020?
So when we're looking at these essential elements, like there's 12 of them, and we're picking off some of the key ones. One is everyone shares to get the unsaid said, because we need to get rid of the past. Another one is
So say that again.
everyone shares to get the unsaid said. In other words,
Okay.
so this is important because when you're having a team, it's not who wants to share, it's everyone shares. Because my philosophy is, if you're going to attend a meeting, the expectation is that you're going to share. And if people are not sharing and it's okay not to share, then why are they there? And so that's why everyone shares to get the unsaid said. The other one, and there's other ones that will help with setting up the year right, is live the Frozen principle. And that's, remember the movie Disney, Frozen?
I have two kids, remember. Yes, it's playing
And
in my
what's the
head.
big slogan? Let it
Let
go.
it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
I did a reboot once where recently actually, and somebody pulled up the song and they played a minute of it, and everyone was laughing, but they really got it. It's not like, oh, forgive and let go. It's like they really got, in order to move forward, you can't be hanging on to the past. You've got to say, okay, we learned, but now let's create a blank slate, which leads to another essential element. Come from possibility use the what if principle. So people say, oh, it can't be done. And how do we know what can't be done? There's so many things that companies and individuals have done that others said it couldn't be done, but they thought there has to be a way. So one of the ways to do this is when you have skeptics, you say, well, what if? So an example would be, and I love this, we're going to double our revenue. Well, can't be done. We've never done it. The most we've ever grown is 10, 20, 30, whatever percent. We're going to double our revenue. So let's talk about how it could be done. And somebody will say, but it can't be done. Then you say, what if it could be done? But it can't be done. I understand. But let's suspend judgment. What if it could be done? Let's use our imagination on how it could be done. So I was working with these consultants and we were having a dialogue and I proposed a question. What if you need to make $1 million in one day or a week? You had to do it. You just had to do it. Of course, the response is can't be done. But by me insisting, what if it could? By the end of our maybe hour conversation, every single person realized it could be done and had already developed a plan on how to generate $1 million in a week. It's not about the money. What I'm trying to say is all of it is what if it could be done? Because people live in why it can't be done. Because, I know I'm going on, but because they suffer from investment bias. So we've all heard confirmation bias. You have an opinion and you look for evidence that's consistent with it. But then there's something that kicks in called investment bias. Investment bias is we develop these biases that we've invested our philosophy and our life on, that if it's proven wrong, it can shatter our life. So let's say I've grown my business because I've lived, the most we can ever do is 10 or 20%. Or, some people you just can't work with. And then suddenly I have a great conversation with the person. I suddenly realize, oh my gosh, this person's a wonderful person. We can work together. Or, oh my gosh, we could double our revenue. I'm so invested in the bias. What that is accepting that a lot of things in the past, I was off. So what I found is a lot of people are self-righteous who just hold on to their bias and opinion. It's because the idea of letting that go is very threatening to them. And so that's why I like to use the what if principle, because it's a subtle way of honoring, okay, you can still have your judgments and your bias, but what if it could? And what happens is over time, they realize they could, and it's kind of a polite way of letting go, and it's particularly their bias.
It's something that I know boils my blood when people come from the can't or scarcity kind of mode, so
Yes.
I appreciate that. So what else? We've been through 3, I think. So do you have a 4th?
Absolutely. Good. There's a lot.
There's 12, but let's do number
so I'll
4.
give you another major one, is the distinction between what you notice in your life and what you imagine. So it's basically said, so I'll do it in a quick way, fact versus opinion. Now, when I say to people, can you understand fact versus opinion? They say, sure. But when we really delve deep, they realize that a lot of what's running the show is their imagination, their opinion.
Absolutely.
And so I do this exercise that starts off this process where people go, I notice, I imagine. Like I might say, I notice you don't have a tie on. I imagine it's comfortable for you. And so there are things that we notice, and there's only 3 categories: appearance, actions, and words. So here's a test. Can you notice somebody's attitude? Can you notice what's going on in their head? And the answer is, there's no way to know. We can notice the words they say, and we imagine what they're thinking. But for example, have you ever had somebody say to you, I'm not bothered by that, and they really were? Or how about this? Somebody who says, I'm really mad at you, and then later on they come out and say, you know what, I wasn't really mad at you, I was mad at something else. And so what happens is that we have to really break down so that when we create a plan, now we're looking at 2020, it's coming from the facts, not our opinions. Because our opinions are often in the basis in the past. So what I mean by that is really looking at what are the tools, what are the resources, what are the facts of this situation. And when you lead a conversation, what I have found is people still interject their imagination as a fact. So for example, they might say, well, that person doesn't care, the customer doesn't care, the customer's difficult, or this person you can't work with. All of those are opinions. Or they're rude, that's an opinion. So, and I'm not saying they aren't rude by certain standards, but I'm saying all these people have their opinions. So you got to break down the difference between fact versus opinion. And then there's an exercise I continue to use after the I notice, I imagine, that proves that 50 to 70% of what we think about on a daily basis is wrong. So which means we are more wrong than right on a daily basis, which is confronting. But it's also great because what that means is we need each other. We need to talk to each other. See, if I think I'm right and you think you're right, and everybody, we have a meeting about 2020, everybody thinks they're right, we're not going to be open to each other's opinion or perspective or how they see the facts. But if we get that, oh my gosh, I could be way off base, like really way off base. I'm going to listen. I'm going to learn. And so that type of thing. So notice versus imagine.
Something I've tried to learn, I've read a book recently, I think it's called Leaders Eat Last.
Yes.
I think. So I like to talk. Sometimes I like to listen to my own voice a little bit too much. So I'm trying to build a principle where I let everybody talk before me because I know I'm very confident and I run the show. So if I speak first, I'm tainting their minds too.
Yes.
So I'm not letting them really become a team. So this is something I'm going to try and do, talk last, even though it's something that's hard for me because I do like to talk.
Well, I can see your point of view because I could be that way too. I know, shocking, isn't it? So here's what I've learned. I learned this from a colonel who's a big client of mine. And I learned, first of all, I've learned a lot by the military. You know, if I said to you, and now I get to the strategy, I know of an organization that has over 1 million employees and they're the best in the world. Would you want to know what they do? And people go, yes, that's the military. So we're always talking about what the companies can teach in the corporate world, whatever. But the military is the best organization for what they do out there. There's nobody that can beat us. And so when you study them, you learn. So one thing I learned from a colonel who's a client of mine is what he does is the structure, because everybody wants to share their opinion and kind of direct people, myself included, right? So I feel your pain. But what he does is he says, okay, look, I have an opinion, but I'm not going to say it. And I want everybody to go around. So everyone shares to get the unsaid said. He calls on every single person to share their opinion. And then he says, okay, now I'm going to sit back, and there might be some more discussion, and I'm going to come back to you tomorrow with a decision. So people really feel that he heard them, and he really does listen. And then he then puts forward the directive. Now that may sound simple, but it is really important for us to come back with a directive. Because I also had a client where I did a reboot, and the problem with her is she was running everything by consensus. So she was like trying to edge people in a decision. And great leaders make great decisions. And so, you know, the way you are is why this company is also very successful. So it's not necessarily something to give up. It's like you listen to people and then you have to make a decision. And that may sound easy to you, but I've met a lot of people who are scared, leaders who are scared to make a decision. They want to be popular rather than respected. You know what's interesting is people want to be popular. They end up not being popular and not respected because people get resentful. Make a decision, right? So it's good.
I completely agree. I don't think leaders should go off popularity. I think the best and most important decisions you make are usually unpopular ones.
Yes.
So getting popular is not really the goal. So guys, you've heard it from some of the best, a performance expert that really knows how to move teams forward. So let's try to implement as much of the things that we can. Thank you so much for stopping by, educating me and educating all our viewers. And please, we'll put some links to some of your books and some of your workshops. See what Steven does. We learn a lot from him. You should too. Steven, thank you so much.
Thank you.